Hey guys, and welcome to our tutorial on mastering color and tone in Photoshop. We've got such a fun tutorial. Now, we're gonna be doing a lot of stuff into Photoshop, but before we get started, I wanted to take a minute and talk about color theory. We're gonna kind of explain the why first, like why this color looks good with that color and why maybe you wanna like pair a red with a blue or whatever it is. We're gonna talk about all that stuff first, and then we're gonna jump into Photoshop. So to start off, we're going way back in time to the original Photoshop experts. We're talking about painters, people like Monet and Van Gogh. And when painting, these people started to notice that when you mixed certain colors with each other, they just kind of turn gray, which is kind of interesting. Basically, the pigments just cancel each other out. They also noticed that when you take those same colors and start to just put them side by side, that they tended to make each of the colors a little bit more vibrant. Now I've got a beautiful original piece of art here. This is by Monet. He wanted to work with two of those colors that he noticed really stood out against one another. So we've got the blue on the horizon, kind of in the early sunrise, and then we've got the orange sun and the reflection on the water. Those two colors were some of the early colors that worked together well. So when you place them side by side, they really make each other stand out. But actually, if you just took like that color blue paint and that color orange and mixed them together, you just get gray, which is interesting. They kind of cancel each other out. So Monet wasn't the first person ever to realize that this color looks really good with that color and that colors have a relationship with one another. People have been noticing these things for centuries. And to try to describe the relationships that colors had with each other and the values that could be mixed together to create other colors, this color wheel was developed. This is the red, yellow, blue color wheel. With this color wheel, it was decided that if you could mix your primary colors of red, blue, and yellow together, that you could get any color in the spectrum. For instance, if you mix red together with yellow, you're gonna get orange. If you mix red with blue, you're gonna get purple. If you mix blue with green, you're gonna get teal. So on this color wheel, colors have different relationships with one another, and depending where they are, they've got different names. So we're gonna start with the very super basic, and this is complementary colors. Now, a complementary color is basically a color. We're gonna start here with blue, and its complement is on the exact other side of the color wheel, and in this case, it's orange. So blue and orange. Now, if you were to mix those two together, you would get gray. As far as we're talking about physical paint here, we're still talking about physical paint. But if you place blue right next to orange, those two tend to stand out really nicely and create what's called complementary colors. And that's why Monet used blue in the background of the sunset or the sunrise and orange for the sun in this painting to create that nice visual balance and make the blue stand out and the orange stand out as well. So just like we have the blue and orange complementary colors, we also have red and green, and we have purple and yellow, and we even have like violet and amber here would be complementary colors as well. So those colors tend to look good when placed next to one another. Now, using complementary colors isn't the only way you can do interesting things with colors. You can also use what's known as analogous colors, and these colors are just next to each other. So for instance, we have our red, we have magenta, we have vermilion. These colors are next to each other, and when placed together, they tend to look really good as well. So you don't have to use just crosses, you can use one side. Or for instance, violet, blue, and teal, when placed together, those are gonna look really good as well. You can get even a little bit more complex if you want. For instance, you could use analogous colors like violet, blue, and teal together, and then throw in a complementary color, and you got an orange, and then you got a really nice color combination as well. You also have what's known as a triad, and that's on 3 different sides of the triangle. So if you, for instance, use red, yellow, and blue together in an image, those 3 colors tend to balance themselves out really well. So you see these things quite a bit. Red, yellow, and blue in paintings, in photographs, in graphic art. All the time you're seeing these colors used together, and it's because they have a proven relationship on the color wheel. Now, when you start mixing different colors together, I don't know if you ever did this, maybe when you were finger painting as a kid. If you took red and green and kind of mixed them together, you get like a kind of grayish brown, kind of like muddy mess. And the more colors you mix together, using physical paint, you're just gonna get more of a grayish brown mess. And that's what's called subtractive color. So subtractive color, physical paint, and the red, yellow, blue color wheel. All those things go together. Now, why are we mentioning this? Things have changed quite a bit. I mean, obviously we still have physical paint, but we also have computers now. And we live in a digital age. It's a lot of fun. And colors mix together differently with light than they do with paint. So that's the big thing we got to keep in mind. It's a totally separate thing. So one, you got physical paint, those colors just kind of meshing together, and they tend to get darker. So that's called subtractive. Darker, down, subtractive. Now the other way we have of making colors is through light. Now when we mix different colors together with light, things get lighter. Like if you had a red spotlight on a wall and a green spotlight and a blue spotlight, right in the middle, it would actually make white, which is super interesting. So paint, subtractive color, gets darker. Light is called additive color when you mix those things together, and they actually get lighter, which is really, really interesting. So for this new model of color and a new technology to display this color, we need a new color wheel. So out with the old and in with the new. This is our red, yellow, blue color wheel that we have been talking about. Now here is our new guy. This is the RGB color wheel, red, green, and blue, and this is used for additive light. Now, of course, this class is on Photoshop, which is done on computers. So we are talking about additive light here, and we're gonna be using the RGB color scale, which is pretty much current nowadays anyway. Now, RGB, pretty cool. You've probably heard this before, red, green, and blue. Basically with additive light, by combining red, green, and blue in different amounts, you can create any color out there. And something that's super interesting, LED displays, things that are on your phone, on your computer, on your TV, they actually have red, green, and blue tiny, tiny little lights called LEDs. And with the combination of those, the red, green, and blue lights in your TV, you can create any picture there is. The RGB scale is literally physically in pretty much every device you're looking at. So on this scale, our RGB, we do still have complementary colors. Red and cyan are complementary colors. They're gonna look good together. We have magenta and green, complementary colors. They're gonna look good together, and blue and yellow, they're gonna look really good together. Now, compare that to our original red, yellow, blue. Again, this is the one that was developed for pigments. They're pretty similar. Okay, in this guy, it says red and green are complementary. In this one, it says red and cyan are complementary. Pretty close. It's not to say that like red and green are no longer complementary colors, because they still are, they're just in a different scale. And in fact, there are a lot of different scales out there. And color, by the way, is totally subjective. So if you think this color looks good with that color, then do it. There really is no right or wrong. There are some guidelines to kind of help you out. The other thing to note, we are doing this in Photoshop. Okay, this is a Photoshop tutorial, but a big, big thing that artists, art directors, photographers do all around the world is they choose different objects that colors work together to place in their images, either it's a painting or a photograph. For instance, you see it a lot with like movies and film, especially if you're, a film kind of guy like me. I really love the Grand Budapest Hotel, and the use of colors in that movie is really interesting. They've just chosen really nice colors and put them together physically to say like, let's see, I'm photographing a person in a red dress today. They're gonna look pretty cool against a cyan wall. So let's go try to find a wall that's cyan and photograph them together. So you can use these things physically in your actual life to put objects together that are going to look good together. Or you could have, they're in a red dress, let's put them on a rose wall and give them something orange to hold, and they've got an analogous color going on there as well. So that's just a little bit of background. I just wanted to make sure you guys kind of knew like what the deal is with color, like a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a theory lesson here before we jump in and just do a bunch of Photoshop. Now, we do have some fun stuff in Photoshop, and I want to show you there's some modern versions of these color wheels and things like that that you can access in Photoshop, and I want to go ahead and get you familiar with some of the color tools in Photoshop.